Imagine waking up to the sound of explosions echoing across a peaceful harbor, warplanes roaring overhead, and battleships burning in flames. In a single morning, thousands of lives are lost, and a nation is thrown into war. This was December 7th, 1941. Day Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor and changed world history forever. Across the vast Pacific Ocean, two powerful nations that once traded and negotiated were now enemies locked in a brutal struggle. What followed was a conflict filled with sacrifice, desperation, and decisions so powerful that they would alter the future of humanity itself. The war between Japan and the United States did not begin overnight. For years, Japan had been expanding its empire across Asia and the Pacific, driven by the need for resources and dominance. The United States, alarmed by Japan's aggression, responded with economic pressure, cutting off vital supplies like oil and steel. As tensions rose, diplomacy failed, and Japan believed war was unavoidable. Pearl Harbor was meant to cripple American power in the Pacific, but instead, it awakened a giant. This video explores how rivalry turned into war, how the Pacific became one of the deadliest theaters of World War II, and how the conflict ended with an unprecedented event that forced Japan to surrender and reshape the world forever. In the early 20th century, the Pacific Ocean was not just a vast body of water, it was a stage where ambition and fear slowly collided. Japan, once isolated from the world, had rapidly transformed into a modern military power. Inspired by Western empires, it believed expansion was necessary for survival. Japan lacked natural resources like oil, iron, and coal, and to secure them, it expanded into China and Southeast Asia. The United States watched this expansion with growing concern. As Japan pushed deeper into Asia, reports of brutality and aggression alarmed the American public and leadership. What began as political tension soon turned into economic warfare. The U.S. imposed strict sanctions and an oil embargo, cutting off Japan's lifeline. For Japan's leaders, this was an existential threat. They believed that without action, their empire would collapse. Slowly, the path toward war became unavoidable. On December 7th, 1941, that tension exploded into open conflict. Japanese aircraft launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Battleships were sunk, aircraft destroyed, and over 2,000 Americans were killed in a matter of hours. The attack shocked the nation and shattered the illusion that the United States was safe from distant wars. The very next day, America declared war on Japan, officially entering World War II. What Japan hoped would be a decisive blow turned into a fatal mistake. Instead of weakening the United States, Pearl Harbor united the American people with a single purpose. Factories shifted to war production. Millions enlisted, and the U.S. prepared for a conflict unlike any it had faced before. The Pacific was about to become one of the most brutal battlefields in history. The early months of the Pacific War were dominated by Japanese victories. Japan rapidly captured territories across Southeast Asia and the Pacific, creating what it called the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. American and Allied forces were pushed back, suffering heavy losses. But the tide began to turn in 1942 at the Battle of Midway. Using intelligence breakthroughs and strategic planning, the United States destroyed four Japanese aircraft carriers, dealing a blow from which Japan would never fully recover. This marked the beginning of America's island hopping. Strategy capturing key islands while bypassing heavily fortified ones. Battles like Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and Saipan revealed the true horror of the Pacific War. Fighting was close, brutal, and relentless. Japanese soldiers, driven by a code of honor that rejected surrender, fought to the death. American forces faced fierce resistance, extreme terrain, and unimaginable casualties. Each island gained came at a terrible cost. As the war dragged on, the imbalance between the two nations became clear. The United States industrial power was overwhelming. American shipyards produced aircraft carriers faster than Japan could sink them, and U.S. air power dominated the skies. By 1944 and 1945, American forces were closing in on Japan itself. Battles at Iwo Jima and Okinawa were among the bloodiest of the war, showing what a direct invasion of Japan might look like. Kamikaze pilots deliberately crashed their planes into U.S. ships, reflecting Japan's growing desperation. Meanwhile, American bombers carried out devastating firebombing raids on Japanese cities, killing tens of thousands of civilians. Despite the destruction, Japan refused to surrender. Its leaders feared occupation and dishonor more than annihilation. The war had reached a terrifying crossroads, where the cost of continuing seemed unbearable for both sides. In August 1945, the conflict reached its most controversial and defining moment. The United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, unleashing destruction on a scale the world had never seen. Entire cities were flattened in seconds, and countless lives were lost instantly, with many more suffering from radiation in the years that followed. Faced with total devastation and the threat of further atomic attacks, Japan finally surrendered, bringing World War II to an end. The war between Japan and the USA reshaped both nations. Japan emerged devastated, but would later rebuild into a peaceful, technologically advanced country. The United States emerged as a global superpower, carrying both victory and moral questions that still echo today. This conflict was not just a war, it was a turning point for humanity, proving that modern warfare could change the fate of the entire world in an instant. The war between Japan and the United States ended in 1945, but its impact continues to shape the world even today. What began as a clash over power and resources turned into a conflict that changed the nature of warfare and the balance of global power forever. Japan paid a devastating price. Yet from the ashes of destruction, it rebuilt itself into a peaceful nation focused on technology, economy, and diplomacy. For the United States, victory in the Pacific confirmed its role as a global superpower, while also leaving behind difficult moral questions that are still debated. This conflict reminds us that war is not just about battles, and victory's it is about choices, consequences, and humanity's responsibility in moments of extreme power. The story of Japan versus USA is a warning and a lesson, showing how quickly rivalry can lead to destruction, and how peace, once lost, comes at an unimaginable cost. Understanding this war helps us understand the modern world, and why history must never be forgotten.